We're looking at a series of events in Egypt that we've been watching now for about 2 weeks. And the media, I must say to you, I do not believe has covered this thing in a very accurate kind of way. There's an awful lot of information that's coming out about how this was a pro-democracy movement, and that there are all these people that want democracy in Egypt are now rising up, and they're trying to force Mubarak out so that they can have free and fair elections. And I will just tell you that I simply, personally don't buy that. I just don't buy it. I don't think that that is in fact the case. I don't think that's what happened. Now, let me point out some things here that we need to keep in mind. First of all, Hosni Mubarak came to power in 1981 because his predecessor, Anwar Sadat, was executed. Now, how many of you in the audience today know what group was responsible for executing Anwar Sadat? It was the Muslim Brotherhood. You're hearing a lot now about the Muslim Brotherhood. You've heard in conferences here, you've heard Rick talk about it, you've heard me talk about it. The Muslim Brotherhood in America, and what a threat it is. Well, the Muslim Brotherhood assassinated Anwar Sadat. Do you know why they assassinated Anwar Sadat? They assassinated Anwar Sadat because he signed a thing in 1978 on the 6th of October, 1978, called the Camp David Accords, in which he essentially made peace with Israel. And the Muslim Brotherhood assassinated him 3 years later because he had made peace with Israel and lived up to those accords. All right? Hosni Mubarak came to power. Hosni Mubarak is in fact a despot, a dictator. He is not a man that has put great emphasis on the civil rights of the citizens of Egypt. And I want to point out one historic fact, because you need to understand this as you think about what's happening there today. Egypt was a Christian country before it was a Muslim country. Do you understand that? Egypt was a Christian country, Coptic Christians, until it was overtaken in 641 by the armies of Muhammad, the Islamic armies, that then subjugated or converted or killed the Christians there. And today, a former Christian country is now somewhere between 15 and 18% Christians. And I suspect that most of you here saw during the Christmas time frame that Christians were killed by guess who? The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Christians were killed in Egypt as they were trying to worship and celebrate the birth of Christ. They are under a tremendous attack today. Well, the one thing that Hosni Mubarak has done is he has outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood. He has kept them relatively suppressed in Egypt. They still exist in a very big way, but they're not a legal political entity in Egypt. And he has kept them suppressed to a large degree. Mubarak, again, is in fact a dictator. So now we have everybody in the media standing up saying, how could we have supported a dictator? Well, a lot of these are the same people that when we went into Iraq in 2003 said, it is not our business to bring down dictators, even though Saddam Hussein was the most brutal of the dictators. Well, the fact of the matter is, there are dictators in every country in the Middle East, with the exception of Israel, the one nation that has been since 1948 a democracy. Now there is a second democracy in the Middle East, and where is that? It is in Iraq. But all the rest of those countries are ruled by dictators. Probably the most benevolent of those dictators is the king of Jordan. A very reasonable man, in fact, and I have spent some time with him. A very reasonable man, but at the end of the day, Jordan is not a democracy. So as we look at what's happening in Egypt, put it in the context of what's happening in the rest of the Middle East. There are dictators all over the Middle East. And there's very little concern about human rights or civil rights. So as we look at Egypt and we say, how can we not stand up and support this movement for democracy? You have to ask yourself, do the people in the Middle East even understand what democracy really is? Let me say that while so much of the media has been touting this, and even good Christian friends of mine are touting this as a pro-democracy movement, I would say to you that I don't believe that is the case. In fact, one of the reasons that I say that is because there is a man that just took over the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood within the last year, and his name is Mohammed Badi. In October of last year, Mohammed Badi made a statement openly to the world criticizing the rulers of these Muslim countries, including Hosni Mubarak, the king of Jordan, King Abdullah, the crown prince and the royal family in Saudi Arabia, and all the other Muslim countries. The new leader of the Muslim Brotherhood got up in October and made a statement criticizing them for not implementing Sharia law in all of these countries, insisting that their responsibility is to implement Sharia law. Followed on the 8th of January of this year by a statement from the leading cleric from Al-Anzar University. Al-Anzar University is the leading school of Islamic jurisprudence or law. And the leading cleric there made a statement that it is now time for Islam to go on the offensive and commit jihad against the leaders of these countries in the Middle East with Islamic populations. And then right on the heels of that 8 January statement, you see what happened in Tunisia, and then it spread over into Egypt, and then you're starting to see the same thing occurring in Jordan, Yemen. There are embers burning in Saudi Arabia. It's happening in Syria, and of course, we're seeing it in Lebanon, and it's going to crop up all over that part of the world. So my belief is, in spite of what the media has said, I believe the Muslim Brotherhood was right at the very base of this. It has become quite popular, even among many of the Christians, to say that this didn't start with the Muslim Brotherhood, but they're seizing the moment. But even those people that have said that are now saying, wow, look what the Muslim Brotherhood is doing, because they have literally gone out and burned 60% of the police stations in Egypt now. They have gone out and done some very atrocious things, which are all attributable to the Muslim Brotherhood now. So even those that said, well, they didn't start it, they're just taking advantage of the opportunity, are starting to say, wow, look at what they're actually accomplishing now. Look at what they're doing. So my view of it is, the Muslim Brotherhood was right in the middle of the beginnings of this thing as a result of what the head of the Muslim Brotherhood said in October and what the cleric in Cairo said on the 8th of January. They're doing exactly what they've been directed to do by the leadership in the Muslim Brotherhood. I believe that you'll see others there that are very much involved in this movement, which are hardcore Marxist. All right, there is also a Marxist element. And remember, and I think I've spoken about this before here, Marxism and Islam run parallel up to a point. They have essentially the same theology. In fact, if you look at the theology of the Nation of Islam in America, Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, if you look at the theologies, they look very much alike. The Marxist theology, which is the theology of the Nation of Islam, which was developed by a guy named James Cone, who was an admitted hardcore Marxist professor here in America. And you look at the Islamic theology of Islam writ large, not the Nation of Islam, but Islam writ large, and they're not the same, by the way. The Nation of Islam is different, although they are working together. Islam and Marxism run parallel up to a point. Okay, and I think that you're seeing a lot of Marxists involved in this. In fact, the question we have to ask now is, would a Marxist Islamic government be better than what they have in Egypt today? Would it be better? In my mind, it would not. Yes, Hosni Mubarak has been a dictator, but he is just like the rest of the dictators in that part of the world.